Thanks for tuning in to Stay Sharp with Razorleaf, your secret weapon for all things digital in products and manufacturing. Jennifer Herron joins the Razorleaf podcast team once again to take another dive into the world of model-based definition, which is the acronym MBD, and PLM. In this episode, Jennifer, Jonathan, and Jen look at the overlap between PLM and MBD and explore which one drives the other. In many cases, it can go both ways and is dependent upon each organization's strategy and goals. Jennifer makes a key observation that organizations are less likely today to experiment and fail their way to success, which is often an important step when adopting model-based strategies and employing PLM technology, because it requires many iterations to get it right. Let's listen in. Welcome back, everyone, to Stay Sharp, the podcast about all things digital related to products and manufacturing. I am Jen Ferello, and I am joined today by my colleague, Jonathan Scott.
Hey, everybody.
And we have a returning guest, Jennifer Herron of Action Engineering. Welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you. Excited for the conversation.
Jennifer is the leader in the model-based definition space, and her company, Action Engineering, helps manufacturing organizations figure out how to get MBE done. And for anyone not familiar with MBE, that is model-based enterprise. And we've got lots of episodes in the past that you can go back through and learn just a little bit more. In those episodes, we defined MBD, talked about some of the differences between MBD and MBE, talked about the challenges around implementing it and other model-based approaches in organizations. In our last conversation with Jennifer, we started talking about some of the crossover between MBD and PLM. And as we were digging into that, it was actually at the end of an episode, we realized, okay, we didn't have time to do it justice at that point. So we are back today to kind of continue that process.
Yeah, this is a great one. I love it, right? Picking up on that topic. The way we ended the last episode talking about this, it was like, yes, this is beautiful. Because, I mean, we each spend a lot of time in those areas and see all of this overlap and all these connections between them. And I think it is really important to look at them because, do you do one or the other or both? Or how do you do it? And what are the things that matter about looking at them together or in order and that kind of thing? So, I mean, I'm ready to jump in.
That being said,
we've choked it. And we choked him up already, so
yeah, he's having some challenges. So no, I'm really excited about this conversation because I feel like I alluded to before we got started, is I have an expert in the PLM space on one hand, I have an expert in the MBE space on the other hand, but both of you are involved with enough organizations, projects, et cetera, that you have kind of an umbrella vision. So this is going to be a great conversation.
Cool, let's do it.
So, I mean, I'll kick us off. When we think about what the crossover is between the two, I've got a few thoughts, but Jennifer, let's start with you. What do you think when we talk about the two topics? What is the crossover between them? Where do they relate, overlap, interface, that kind of thing?
Yeah. At a basic level, at a very high level, they are overlapping when you talk about data management. Model-based definition is data that needs to be configuration managed. It needs data management. It's big data, in quotes.
Right.
And
they need each other, right? They interface.
Well, I don't know. The PLM needs MBD. I think the enterprise needs MBD, and an enterprise has PLM. So leverage that within the MBD space to do your data and configuration management. So I think that's the big overarching umbrella of what is important. Because model-based definition, we're not talking about one CAD file or one drawing file with all the information at one point within the life cycle. It's important to figure out ways to integrate those data elements over the life cycle. And I think people often think of model-based definition as defining the product definition within a CAD model.
Right. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, at the heart of it is. What I can tell you is, so we are involved in a whole bunch of standards organizations, ASME, DMSC, ISO, and what we're coming up against, all these industry perspectives are coming up against is, well, yeah, but I can do other things with that data. And so how do we control all that data now? And I think that's where the overlap comes in at a high level. And then, of course, I have 3 other points, but we'll get to that later.
Right. But I'm going to take that, I'm going to take the IT guy perspective on that piece.
Yeah,
and
I think
say,
that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. It's the data management. It's, hey, from the MBD world, we've got data elements that we're focused on, right? And we're working through how do those data elements get packaged, stored, tracked, related, all those things. And that world is evolving, right? To your point about standards, tools, technologies.
I'm glad you used the evolve word because I was going to use that too. Yes, I think that's important. I mean, evolving for sure.
And what goes right along with that, to your point, is so you have to figure out how to manage it. Because you have to manage it over time, especially if it's going to evolve. Even if it didn't evolve, even if it was all set, it's not one file, to your point earlier.
Yeah.
It might not be one database. It might be a collection of files, database, whatever. That means you have to think about how to manage that data together. And that's where you say, aha, PLM, doesn't it do that?
And here's an important quote that we hear all the time. I heard it yesterday. Somebody said, okay, I get that we're going to put this information in the model, but how do I know it's right? How do I know it's been done right? And so it's about trust. And I think configuration management for us detailed-oriented engineers is always, always front of mind. I'm like, oh, crap, what did I just change? And I think that's extremely important to make sure that what we're doing with the interfaces between MBD and PLM is ensuring that they are easing the burden on the engineering anxiety brain.
Yeah.
I mean, letting us sleep at night, right? Because then we know the data is sound and things will go correctly.
Well, and that's the point of both of these topics, right? I mean, that's the point of putting data into a model to further define it, and that's the point of PLM as well, is making sure that you can efficiently use that data throughout the product lifecycle.
Precisely.
And I think that highlights to me one of these important places of overlap, because I'm going to oversimplify something for a minute, so bear with me. But if I oversimplify model-based definition, I say it's a point-in-time thing. It's a definition of something. Now, we all know it's going to change over time, right? But if I think purely about what it is, it's defining something for a moment. And PLM, Product Lifecycle Management, implies the time element. It changes over its time, whatever time period is. And that's where the two have to go together, because it gets to exactly your point. Configuration management is about saying, at any point in time over a time span, what is the information I should trust? What information am I using, right? And so that's where they're hand in glove, in my mind, in terms of crossover. That yes, you've got MBD taking a very deep look at how you define something, but PLM taking a look at what does that mean over time,
right?
And what's the right definition to look at.
And I think in the last 15 years, they have been siloed because they've evolved from different pathways, and they're being used in different ways. I mean, it's the best part about a creative set of people that get together and go, oh, I can use this data this way. Why wouldn't I? It's easier. It's faster. It's not cheating when you're trying to, have business value. I just said, if you're writing something and you need help in business, it's not cheating if you're using ChatGPT. It's just faster. You're just getting to your business value faster, right? Now, if you're trying to go to school and reflect and learn, that's a whole different story.
Cheating.
That is cheating. That is actually cheating. But yeah, so I mean, I think in this aspect, using the data in new and creative and better trusted ways is paramount. That's what we're trying to do.
Does that also change the data though? Not the data itself, but the type of data. I feel like that's evolved. So MBD has evolved over time based on you used to put in just this amount of data. As people started using it further down, you're like, oh, well, we could put in more, or we could change that. We could add.
Right.
So
I agree with you, Jen, and I think that's what is freaking everybody out right now. It's why there's so many people involved in standardization. There's a harmonization effort happening within the ASME Y14 series, which is product definition. It's a drawing standard. There are 40 people on the call talking about the between symbol. And they're extremely engaged because they have been trying to do model-based definition conversions from drawings and have come across pain points. And it's not anybody's fault. It's not the standards fault. It's not technology's fault. It's not the individual's fault. It just is. And that level of harmonization and that level of conversation across all industries, like in the world, is extremely tedious. And it takes a very special focus on the target and the end goal. And then, of course, ASME is a consensus body that's governed by ANSI, as is the DMSC, and ISO is also a consensus body, internationally governed, and sanctioned by the UN, by the way, which I think is pretty cool. And so I think there's really important things happening at that level, even though they seem super tedious and mundane, and that we're arguing about a comma, which we do. But which we argue about a comma, and there's not one like English major in the room. It's a problem, but that's a different story entirely.
Different usage of commas. One would, I think, could be the argument there.
Yeah, for sure.
But talking back to the crossover piece, right? Yeah. There's clearly some hand in glove element. Yeah. Is there also some overlap? I mean, I can think of a few things, but I don't know. Do you see overlap between the two topics or subjects?
Well, yeah, definitely. And I think there are three big concepts in my mind to focus on with MBD to PLM crossover. And I think the first one is about interface clarity. Yeah. What does the between symbol look like? And are you configuration managing it? And how are you revisioning your native CAD file, your derivative CAD files, whether they're STEP or QAF or 3D PDF, HTML? How are you managing those derivatives? How are you stapling them together? Mm-hmm. So that's number one, is the interface clarity. Number two is the user experience of the information exchange.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? What do you mean by user experience?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you number three, and then I'll wrap back around to it. So number three is people, simple people. And if I start with the people explanation,
okay,
what people need is to make their work easier. They don't need to make it harder. They don't need to make it more complex. They don't care if it's automated. But if it were easier, anything in the background that is happening will eventually make them have higher quality work, and it will be faster.
And I certainly get the fact that that's a crossover between these two topics,
and
right?
That's a crossover
that is clearly.
For sure. Clearly, right. Because how do you check in? How do you check out? How do you revision control? How do you enter the metadata? Where does it go? Where does it sync? All that stuff is important.
Yeah. And both these technologies should be serving people, right? That's the point. And it's what in service of easier, to your point.
Right. So if the metric is focused on people about making their work easier, ease of use, then we can get to the faster, better, cheaper kind of metrics, but that's not what you're focused on.
Right, which makes perfect sense, because if you're focused on user experience and making that easier, you'll get to more efficient, faster, cheaper, better.
Yes. Right. And in my experience, people focus on faster, better, cheaper, and then they implement wrong instead of focusing on the ease of use for the people. So then that's the user experience piece. Yeah.
Do people tend to focus on that because, and we've talked about people in a lot of different podcasts that we've had.
Do you think
people? Yeah. Do you think
apparently
that
we're people?
apparently,
not robots.
Do we tend to focus on faster, cheaper, better because those are easier to measure than people and expectations? And how do you measure user experience?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's important. And that's why I think user experience is important, because they do have measurements for user experience. We use a typical user experience tool called SUS, which off the top of my head, can't remember what it stands for, SUS. You can Google it. And it
I was going to use some of my my teenager language and say, Jen, that is totally sus.
That's totally sus. I know it's exactly what it sounds like. Yeah, for sure.
Different joke.
Right. That is, yeah, sounds like something that came out of Among Us. So the importance of that is a series of questions that get turned into something quantitative, like a number 1 through 10 or 1 through 5, whatever it is, and then gives you a score at the end. Now you have to take all that obviously with a grain of salt, because at the basis it is qualitative. It's still qualitative, but you're trying to represent it as quantitative data. I am literally not an expert in any of that, but there are plenty of people that are. We have a user experience person on our team. We partner with social scientists and other organizations that are focused on that qualitative research. So it's at a super high level in my, again, non-educated mind about user experience. If it's easy, then I will get immediate value and I will adopt it. If it's hard,
right,
and the value isn't obvious, then it's just hard and the adoption doesn't happen, and I don't have time for hard.
And if the adoption doesn't happen, then you're not getting your use out of the tool. So then you're not getting the ROI, you're not getting the efficiencies. It's not better, faster, cheaper.
No,
it's just another tool sitting there collecting dust.
Just another tool collecting dust, and you pissed off the people.
Right. Your point is, right, focus on the nexus of things, right? Yeah. And then you'll get all these outcomes that you need, right? But don't focus on all the outcomes. Figure out where you need to focus.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some fancy business research that backs up that thought. Right. But that's just that's what I see and have observed is and even for, me personally as a leader at Action Engineering, I think it's important. If you focus on the people and making their work easier, whatever processes you're shaking out, and, we're like constantly improving our business processes at Action Engineering. It's just a thing. And if you focus on, does that make it easier or does that make it harder? No, that made it harder. Okay, well, let's not do that.
Let's stop doing that. Although there are cases where making it harder initially makes it
there's value
easier,
to that. But that's a nuanced conversation of, do you think it will be easier after you learn X, Y, and Z? And then what support systems do you need to learn X, Y, and Z, right? And that's still focused on the people and still focused on the user interface, because the easier the interface, the less training, education is needed. Now, all that being said, making a simple interface is not easy.
Well, that's what I was going to do is, since I have the two of you, is I'm going to kind of throw a bomb in your midst here and talk, not a BOM, by the way. And
good one.
And say, okay, like PLM, MBD, is there you need them both if you're going to do the whole thing, but like, is there a right order as far as how best to do it?
I'm going to let Jonathan start. Jonathan, is there a right order? This is my turn. Order. I don't get to interview you.
No, there you go.
I like it. So, I'm going to offer an opinion. I know you're shocked. I think there is. I think there's a right order, because I think a lot of organizations, it's sort of taking people where they are. A lot of organizations are building products today, and they're not doing MBD. And MBD is sort of an advanced state of the art to help them move forward. And so given that, I think if they're not doing PLM, you can do some PLM before you do MBD. So I think if you're an organization who's looking for incremental value out of digital tools, I think there is an order, lightly. That order is, sure, take wherever you are today and work towards more digital management of your product lifecycle, however you do it today.
Right, back to one of our first episodes, caveman.
Caveman, right? You're starting to build your what was it, a spear?
I think. A spear.
Yeah. If you haven't listened to that one, go back. It's entertaining, I hope. But it's you're just advancing where you are, right? And
Yep.
I don't mean to put MBD on
Incrementally.
too much of a pedestal, but it is an advanced state of the art of where engineering was, or is today even. So I do think there's an order there that you can follow. Having said that, I wouldn't be dogmatic about it, right? There are people who do some PLM and then need to move to MBD and then back to PLM. And to me, that's the real answer. It should be iterative, but if you're looking at it broad brushstrokes and you're saying, hey, I'm an organization, I'm feeling immature about my digital product processes, where should I go next? I would say, make sure you've got some digital PLM capabilities. And then I think that's going to give you a foundation that you're going to need to build out some MBD capabilities. Because then here's my punchline, because I think MBD leads you to MBE, and that's about the enterprise working together, and you need a platform for it, right? And a product lifecycle management system, whatever that may be, is the kind of platform you need for the data management, the data sharing, all those things.
Right.
So that's my take. Tell me I'm crazy.
No, I think you're spot on. And I think that this is the part that's really, really hard. How do you think about all the things that it could be in the end? How do you think of all of the things a digital enterprise could be in the end without putting yourself into analysis paralysis or putting your entire organization into analysis paralysis? And I see this a lot. We want an entire comprehensive strategy and plan to get us to the future. And then they take 5 years, literally, to build that plan. Well, the future already happened.
I was going to say, at which point it's out of date.
You missed the future while you were planning.
Right. And this
it's now
is
the past.
Region. Yeah. We just had some recentering, realignment, some basics of agile mindset principles for us, just because, you always got to go back to the basics. I forget stuff all the time. So one of the things that's really important in the agile methodology is around a dynamic target. If you have a dynamic target in the air that you're trying to blow up, that requires a dynamic navigation system. So therefore, your project management activities have to be dynamic. So you can't spend 5 years making the perfect plan, because you'll be wrong, and then you will have never done anything. And so I think that's super, super important to keep in mind, is that this is really dynamic. And you said it earlier, Jonathan, that we're evolving. We are evolving. The people involving. See, people important. People are evolving their understanding of what we should be doing. People are evolving, or people are evolving the technologies, which includes how they understand the problems. Therefore, then the technologies are evolving. People are involving the standards and the processes and the protocols that they use, and even the protocols they use. Like, we think about the STEP standard as the gold standard of translation, but that is being evolved. People are thinking of it differently, even in the STEP community. There's a lot of, well, what if we did that better? What if we did that differently? What do the users and what do the people need?
Because the problems are evolving as well as the technologies are evolving.
Right. And so everything is a mess, right? And so I think where I was going to go with all this, because I think that's the big part. That's the big complexity, Jonathan, is that if you need data management for your model-based definition files, just to keep it simple right now, what do you need? What interfaces do you need? What user experience do you need to make that process adoptable by the people? What's going to work? And I think that improves overall collaboration just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to air a little Action Engineering dirty laundry. We actually don't have a data management system at Action Engineering. This is the cobbler's children.
You're getting calls you would not believe after this.
Yeah. So you have to understand, we're a small business, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But
oh, trust me, I understand.
Yes, I know you do.
Having lived through 20 plus years of consulting,
right.
I understand.
That's right. So
you're not special. You're not special.
Damn it. I was going to be special today.
You are special. You're not unique. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Not a unique problem. Definitely one for a small business, right? Is the cost, both with the time that you have to spend on putting it together, et cetera, et cetera. Because there is no out of the box PLM solution, PDN solution, whatever. By the way, the L is for life cycle, the D is for data. So,
right.
Yes, they mean two different things.
There's a podcast on that.
There's a podcast on that.
There is.
Go check it out. It's important to understand what the needs are. And this is really, this is the tedious part. This is why it doesn't get done. This is why people are failing at it, is they're not doing the tedious part of what is the exact workflow for the revision process. And in my mind, if I think about it, it's 3 boxes. But when we went to draw it out, it's like 15 boxes because of all the different people and the different activities that have to happen. So I think that's a really important step for people to tackle. If you are a small business, just start mapping it out, diagramming out that workflow. That'll get a lot of clarity right off the bat. So I like 3 tips for small businesses.
I want to jump in on that, though. You're bringing up something I think that's important on our crossover of MBD PLM topic, right?
Yeah.
Which is MBD and the MBD tools that we might use are going to dictate some piece of process. PLM.
Eventually they do. Yeah, that's right.
Right. PLM is going to hopefully support some piece of process and maybe let you tie processes together. That's another crossover area, right? And it gets right to this question about which do you do first? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's chicken and the egg, because you need to know, well, what's my MBD objective? What am I going to go put in place that, to your point, is easy for people to use and adopt and those things? So you got to target. Now, what do I need to support that? How do I make that fit into my existing process, my existing business, whatever? Do I have a platform to support it? Or is it like, I've got this tool that lets me generate the content. I got this other tool that lets me consume the content. I don't know how I get from one to the other. PLM, right? So this gets back to that. Right. You have to look at them together, even if there might be some iterative order of put a little bit in place, try this out, put a little more in place to support it. Right. Then you could get this capability, and then you can add,
Well, and I think, okay, so there's a graph, there's images in my mind, because this is how I work. I think in pictures. So I think there's a PLM row, and I think there's an MBD row. And I think there's some bouncing of target capabilities that are achieved as you flow with time.
Yep.
And those are probably, I'm making a Gantt chart, by the way, with my hands. That's what's happening.
With your hands. I see it.
Yes. And they're alternating. The Gantt chart is alternating.
You guys are both nuts.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely, Jen.
Coming back to your point earlier, or they're happening in sprints, and we've just got sprints going on and on, right? And our sprint focus changes from time to time as we say, hey, I've got to go work more on the MBD capability. Oh, hold on. I can't get to that next plateau on the MBD capability until I spend a little more on the PLM capability.
Right. And this is what bothers me about PLM and MBD being separate implementations, is that if you don't have crosstalk between MBD and PLM, you'll never get to the creativity you need or the innovation mindset that you need to crosstalk between the two. You'll just never figure it out because you're not talking to each other.
Right. And you end up with suboptimal solutions, right? Each team optimizes their solution, and sometimes at the expense of the other.
Right. Now, then I think we have to talk about capacity and resources. And what happens is, I have budget. I must pick PLM or I must pick MBD. And they're not thinking of a digital enterprise implementation holistically. So then they don't budget holistically. And this happens all the time. Oh, yeah, we'll definitely go spend $5 to $10 million on PLM, but we're only going to spend $5,000 on buying a new tool for MBD. Okay, so expect that to fail.
Right. And then
it comes back to business strategy, though, right? Yes. What was your strategy? What were you trying to accomplish? What was the value you wanted out of this? And did you align that activity to that?
And do your implementers know what the value is? Are they even understanding what the target is? Because most of the time they don't, especially big companies. It's terrible. Big vision, voluntold. No, but person at the bottom actually has to do the work and has no idea what the end game is.
I know we're going to run out of time. That's a given when we talk. I know that's coming.
We're doing better.
Before we get there, I want to take a minute and I want to deep dive. I want to deep dive on something practical.
He does this every time, Jen.
He does. He does. He's doing it earlier. He's doing it earlier. You got like 3 minutes to deep dive.
I got 3 minutes. Okay. 3 minutes to deep dive. Everybody hold your breath. We're going down.
Speed round.
All right. I want to talk about a practical example, right?
Yeah.
So how do we figure out, how should people figure out, like, I need to do a release process. All right. That sounds like a pretty PLM-y thing, right? Engineering change in your release process.
Yes.
But I want to do a release process in the model-based enterprise view of things.
Yes.
Right? Yes, please. That's what we want.
Yes.
Now, how do we figure that out? Let's talk through that for a minute, right? Because here are the challenges.
Well, it's actually not that hard. You put all of your definition in the model, and then you send your definition to a software tool that compares your first revision with your second revision, and you automatically collate and report out on the changes that occurred. And hopefully they're the changes that you made as the designer. And you, if they're not, then you have the ability to fix it before it goes to production, which is important. And then you already got an automated report. But it's all predicated that you put everything in the model. And that's the hard part. It's the everything in the model where people
sense of butt coming.
Yeah, there's a butt coming. That's great. I love it.
Okay, let me rephrase this because my friend Annalise she's right about this. Like, you actually don't have to put everything in the model. But you could just start with geometry or geometric model for Ben Yarrick if he's listening. So it is, if you just start with the shape aspects of it that were changed, that's a super easy starting point. You're already making geometry in the model. So that's a no-brainer. That's a great way to do it. Use an automated comparison tool to report out on your revisions. And then all that data gets stored in the PLM, PDM, whatever you got.
And this is where digital helps us, right? Because we can do those comparisons. So even if those tools, if we don't have exactly what we want, we're getting there, it's evolving, right? I'm with you. That's good on change. I'm coming back to let's talk first release. So here's my stumper. Okay. So you put your definition in your model file. Engineering says, we're good. That is the definition of the product. Okay. But my release process in my company actually is about getting it to manufacturing. And so it's a machine part. We're going to machine it. So we've got tool paths. We've got things that I would like to add into my model. Oh, are they a separate file? Are they a single file?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Yeah. When did the thing get released?
Yep.
Right?
Had this conversation yesterday. Yep.
So this is my deep dive part, right? Because I think people want to hear this. They want to know this is hard. And there are challenges here.
Yeah, and this is the fail fast scenario. You're going to have to go try a bunch of stuff and see what works within the technologies you have now if you want it implemented today.
Right.
And I don't think that's what people are doing. They're just pontificating about it. Shut up and go do work.
Right.
And it's okay to fail. Like, we are completely, I don't know what happened to us in the engineering world, but we've lost the ability to experiment because we're trying to get to a production level ASAP. And we're not prototyping. We're not proof of concepting. I don't care what you call it. We're not MVP. All of the things we're not doing. And if you start with the mindset of experimentation and just sort of figure out a whole bunch of options, you're going to be so much better off, because then you're like, oh, these 3 things from those 10 options, that seems working, that works. And even Bob thinks that's a good idea. So that's, if even Bob thinks it's a good idea, then I think you're on the right track.
So I'm gonna pull us out of the deep dive with that, right? So that's what I meant to get to, is take a very specific problem where there is not a one answer to it, to your point, right?
No, that's right.
with models and files and, files that share content to other files or need to relate to it, or we're putting all the information in a single model, but yet, hey, the engineering definition got released, so you're not allowed to change that file, even if you need to put your manufacturing content in it. Oh, hold on. There are all these challenges. But your advice, I'm 100% on board with. The answer for the audience here is you've got to go try it out. There are not answers. These technologies are maturing, but you got...
There are answers. There is not a singular answer. He's very passionate.
We choked him up. Yeah. We totally choked him up. Yeah, there's not a singular answer. That's right.
There's not one answer, right? There's not one single answer to it. But the point is, you have to work your way through it. You have to figure it out.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out. And it's tedious. And I think that hard work is really scaring people.
But that's the crossover. That's what I was really trying to get to. Is coming back to
the crossover.
Where were we on this? Is you have to work through it and you have to look at the two together and how they play together.
Yeah.
Well, to get to the answer.
And I like what Jennifer was saying about it. You have to be okay with failing. That's where you learn a lot of things. Like I do think, and it's not just an engineering focus or a manufacturing focus. It's people in general. Like again, back to people, right? We're afraid to fail. But that's where you learn. You want to fail fast, not all of the time. You do want to have some successes along the way, but you want to just dig in there. And I think so. What I'm hearing from you both is there's definitely crossover there, and like we come back to so many times, there is the best solution is a hybrid solution as far as you're going back and forth between the two. You're advancing both in parallel. Again, considering the people, because that's where the magic happens. What else? Any last minute tidbits you want to leave the listeners with?
I think this is my summary.
Okay,
it's back to the first thing I said, which is if the ease of use metric, for the people. If that is the metric for configuration management and collaboration between people, then our focus is on that interface, and we're keeping that interface in mind. And then as we go through this and we're doing this hard work, is it easy? No, it's not. All right, throw that idea out. Is this easy? Yeah, that was great. Keep that one. And you keep that mindset so you can iterate through a whole bunch of different scenarios really, really quickly, and focus on, is it easy for the people involved in that particular process? I think that's where you're going to get a success. Otherwise, you're in analysis paralysis forever.
We don't need that. Nobody needs that. Nobody's got time for that.
Exactly.
All right. So I feel like this won't be the last time we see you, Jennifer. It's always a good discussion. So I want to thank you again for joining us. And I feel like like I said, I feel like we'll be back. And thank you, Jonathan, for being such a good leading host here. And
if I can talk today,
yes.
Sorry.
Well, but it was every bit the interchange the exchange that I hoped it would be. So thank you both for that. Hopefully everybody else, our listeners, agreed. If there's a question that you had or a piece that we didn't cover, please reach out, let us know, be part of the conversation. It's all the much richer for having you in it. You can find the podcast on our website and all the places you find podcasts. And until next time, stay sharp.
Thank you for being here and listening to this episode of Stay Sharp with Razorleaf. If you have any questions about model-based definition and PLM overlap, we'd love to have that conversation. Just leave us a comment on our post or send us an email at podcast@razorleaf.com. We appreciate all the feedback we receive from our listeners, so don't be shy. If you like this podcast, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Until next time, stay sharp.